Welcome to the Colorful Clipboard, where we discuss the building blocks of making dough in childcare. I'm Kate.
And I'm Carrie.
Welcome back to Colorful Clipboard. Carrie and I are so excited to have you join us. Today, happy Nutrition Month. So you shouldn't be really surprised that Carrie and I found a special month that we decided we wanted to at least spend one episode. We'll probably do 2 episodes this month related to Nutrition Month, along with all the other stuff that we do, right? So when we talk about nutrition, Carrie, when you start hearing the terms childcare and nutrition or food, what immediately pops into your mind?
CACFD, the Child and Adult Food Department program. I don't remember what it all stands for, but the USDA food program. That's the first thing that pops into my head, because it's now what rules all of our nutrition choices at the center, even if we don't participate in it. I also think,
because the first thing that pops into my head is that one parent who sends the Lunchable with, a bag of carrots taped on top or something. So.
Well, yeah. Other things that pop into my head are I would like my child to have a Frappuccino as their drink at lunch. And I also think about the fact that it can be a huge expense in your budget, because again, thinking back to a specific teacher I had who wanted to have food choices that were not financially prudent for the school. Every child needs to have their own kiwi, and I'm like, do they? I don't think every child needs their own kiwi and things like that. But even if you don't have teachers who are making special requests that are expensive, you can still have a lot of food waste, or you can be feeding kids a bunch of, for lack of a better term, crap. I see what is served at some elementary schools for breakfast and for lunch, and I'm like, how are you doing that and calling that nutrition? Like a honey bun and a glass of apple juice and a glass of milk. How is that nutritious? That is sugar and sugar with sugar on top and some milk on the side. I just, I don't understand. So, I have a lot of thoughts, but the first one is the food program. And then I go, spending money and parents who don't understand.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the spending money, the parents don't understand. And then let's wrap it up with having you do a why the food program 101. In other words, how would somebody get started and why should they get started? So I want to talk just real short about the financial aspect of food, because Carrie brought that up. And one of the things that I was actually having this conversation earlier today with my son about freezer cooking, batch cooking, and how long have I been doing this? My son is 28 and I did this before he was born. So we decided that it had been a really, really long time. And I've done it on so many different levels. So I did it when I was pregnant with children. I did it when I had children. I did it when we did summer camps. It works really, really well to even do at a center. I mean, every one of us have seen the price of food, especially meat products, going up. So, when you see a special, you want to buy it, right? Like you want to take that product. If you are, in a situation where maybe you're a big box discount buyer and you really like the Sam's Clubs and the Costco's, but still, sometimes you really have to look at the per pound cost, right? But still, you have a massive amount of this product.
Here, so, please have a 35-pound brisket.
Okay, well, I'd just take that home. We'll use ground turkey, because I have seen some ridiculously low prices for ground turkey in the past, but it is for something insane, like 20 or 30 pounds. And so when you go thinking about that, think about all the different types of food. And in previous episodes, we have talked about the importance of cultural diversity even in your food. So, just because you bought 30 pounds doesn't mean that you have to have 30 pounds of ground turkey that week. You can, cook it up, you can make it all with, some garlic and onion powder and just cook it all up and then use it for a variety of things from tacos to spaghetti sauces to a variety of products, meatballs, meatloaf.
The Asian lettuce wraps where you have the ground turkey and then you add a little bit of chili sauce and some bell peppers. Kids love that because it's a sweet chili. It's not spicy chili. And anytime you can wrap up your food, that is a win for a child, even if they're wrapping it up in lettuce. They definitely like that. That's a good, easy to make and works really well with the ground turkey.
Absolutely. And then there's just the simple things like, making casseroles. You can never go wrong with a casserole, and casseroles freeze so well. So, you get some whole wheat pasta and ground turkey. It's like, if you've got the ability, just because, cauliflower happened to be on sale that week, put in some cauliflower. Most of the time the kids don't necessarily recognize the difference between the cauliflower and the pasta, and boom, you've tricked them. So
and then, when they take it out of the freezer, you throw the tomato sauce on it, throw it in the oven, and you've got all of the vegetables you need. You've got the whole grain, you've got the protein, and then you just give them a half a banana. I don't know if that would go with that. I don't know, a different fruit.
Yeah, well, I would actually probably make sure I put some cheese on top because, you can never go wrong with cheese. But that's just one example of how to really save a lot of your money. Again, it can be that you're buying the ground turkey for the entire month. And so, again, that comes back to meal planning. And I do know a lot of directors, they don't do it personally. They definitely don't do it at their center. They're really into chicken nuggets. They're into spaghetti. They're into things that are what they consider kid friendly.
Kid food.
And so don't worry about kid food. Think about economics, diversity, think about your population. Are you having beans and rice or some equivalent? Okay. It can be refried beans, it can be lentils, it can be, any sort of that. That should be something that should be in your menu every single week because it's high protein, it's great fiber, and it's low cost. It's no meat. I mean, I'm not saying you have to do, but you can do it from all different cultures, right? Like, so, red beans and rice, you can, pick your culture, pick your.
Yep. Some Indian Madras lentils, which you can buy at Costco already made. So I love it in the summer menu because all I'm doing is microwaving rice and then I add the Madras lentils, and that's a vegetable and a protein. Ha ha. I love that. Then I can give them, some fruit on the side, some pineapple or some papaya with that. They drink that with milk. Everybody's happy, and I didn't have to warm up the kitchen.
So let's talk real quick about fruits and vegetables, because again, one of the things that I think a lot of programs get stuck with is, again, so we talked just briefly a little bit about what people think of as kid food, but let's think about what kid food or what food and fruits and vegetables are in season. So these are always going to be less expensive than if you just say, I want strawberries, but it's December. Right. So like, there's just some things that don't necessarily make sense. If it is summer and it is melon season, have that melon, right? Like, have it when you're supposed to have it. Again, the kids can explore squashes when squashes are in season. It doesn't mean, and nobody said the kids have to necessarily eat it all. You're trying to introduce it to them. So,
and they say you have to introduce the new food at least 3 times before the child will even taste it. So you give them a tiny bit of zucchini the first time and a tiny bit of zucchini the second time. And then the third time they're like, I've seen this before. Other kids ate it. I will try it.
Right. And but zucchini, it's funny. So zucchini is another one of those items, kind of like cauliflower, that you can shove in casseroles, and the kids don't necessarily notice. It's the reason why we have things like eggplant lasagna and stuff like that. Those high veggie dishes are really easy to do in that casserole format. We often did a kind of a Johnny Marzetti. So, spaghetti sauce, ground turkey, ground beef, whatever, with macaroni noodles, and I would often put in chopped zucchini. I wouldn't cook it ahead of time because you don't want squishy zucchini. And depending on the kids in my program, depended on whether or not I peeled the zucchini. If they did not like green things, I just went ahead and peeled the zucchini and then put it in. So they didn't necessarily realize what it was. So, definitely worth being creative, definitely worth thinking outside the box, and always think through. Let's just say you have 60 kids. That's not 60 servings. 60 kids, when you're looking at serving sizes, most of the time, most kids are lucky. We're lucky if these kids are eating half a serving, right? So most of the time.
But like, it's a quarter cup of a fruit or vegetable, which is not very much. That is a half of one of those half of a corn on the cob. Like it is a quarter of a corn on the cob to get you that quarter cup. So they might eat a whole serving, but it is much less food than we think it is as adults, because it's a half a cup for the whole day that they're at your center. They're supposed to have a half a cup of vegetables between breakfast, snack, lunch, afternoon snack. You may not be serving all 4 of them, but that is, most programs do 3 meals. But even if you did 4, like I'm saying, it's a half a cup of vegetables over the time, from the time they show up at 6:30 in the morning until they leave at 6:30 in the afternoon. You can get kids to eat a quarter cup if you offer them 2 or 3 vegetables over the course of the day. If you offer a kid from Central Texas a quarter cup of refried beans, they're going to say, "Yes, ma'am, may I have another?"
That would be a really interesting thing. I'd love to figure out how many inches of an average carrot, or how many baby carrots a quarter of a cup is. I don't know why. I'm a little strange. Or, an average zucchini that's 8 inches long, a quarter cup is literally 1 inch worth of zucchini. Okay, so anyway, I guess I have projects for myself for National Nutrition Month, because I don't know about y'all, but I've been so programmed to understand, 4 ounces of meat for an adult is the palm of my hand, right? But so I like that size. Don't ask me the size of anything else, because I really just don't know the answer. So when you are meal planning and meal prepping for your child care center, be very realistic to yourself. What is a serving size? Okay. And how many staff or how many kids do you have? And, I've seen some programs have a ton of food waste, and I also see that they don't ever seem to offer it to the staff. So if you do find yourself over prepping, over cooking, figure out how to. Some meals, yes, you can repurpose, right? So you can take hamburgers and repurpose those into chili or something like that. And it's still very much a viable food, right? It's not like you've made something out of something gross or whatever. But, really think through, is there another place that this, even if it's only one person's worth of food, there's a chance that you have somebody on staff that could make a huge difference for. So I really want you to think about the message that you're sending to your staff as far as food waste.
And to your children. Because again, you may have a kid who is having some food insecurity at home. And if there's an ability at the end of the meal, if those things are packaged up and anybody can take those at the end of the day, it may be a kid who's going through a growth spurt and they're just eating everything in the house. And the kid is like, I'm going to need more food in the 30 minutes it takes me to get home. Or it could be a kid who's having food insecurity, or it could be a staff member who has 3 teenagers at home. You know, if it's available and it's clear anybody can have this, if there are leftovers at the end of the meal, I think that's equitable.
Absolutely. And so I talked about beans and rice. And so in addition to beans and rice, things like oatmeals, things like eggs, even something like pancakes or French toast, these are all things that are very inexpensive to create in mass quantities that you can then use other ways. So, scrambled eggs can always be flipped into fried rice the following day if for some reason you made too much and nobody was in the mood for scrambled eggs. Again, think through, if you know you're going to have bread, you don't necessarily need the freshest bread that day. If you happen to be going grocery shopping and you're having French toast as your lunch, then go get the day old French bread that's in the back that's really cheap. It doesn't have to be brand new, fresh. I mean, I'm not talking about moldy bread. Let me make sure that I make that clear, right? I'm not talking about getting that moldy bread. I'm talking about getting that stuff that it's still good today and tomorrow. It's just not good next week, right? Because it's got a lot less preservatives, but it's also only 50 cents.
Well, and another thing to think about is if we're feeding the kids based on the USDA food program, and, it says that we're not supposed to put, we don't give kids sweets all the time. Yeah, we don't give them sweets all the time. And if you're on the food program, which I know we're talking about later, but one of the things is that if you have to buy enough milk to give everybody the servings of milk they're supposed to have. Okay, so we bought enough milk for everybody to have the number of servings they're supposed to have. It's the summer and the kids are just wanting to drink water. So we gave them their first cup of milk and nobody wanted seconds. What am I going to do with all that leftover milk? I can put that and put it in the fridge, and we can make pudding tomorrow and make that as a special treat that wasn't on the menu, that is just a special treat because I have an extra 1.5 gallons of milk and I don't want to pour it out. But so that's another way to use that food waste positively. You have bread food waste, you can make bread pudding. You have rice food waste, you can make rice pudding. You have leftover fruit, we can make a fruit salad. So sometimes the food waste can be repurposed into something else that people can eat at your center that's just not on the menu. It's just an extra treat. Fruit salad is a great way to repurpose. Nobody wanted those kiwis that the teacher wanted. Okay, we're going to cut them up and put them in the fruit salad on Friday.
Or make a fruit compote for French toast or some other item. Absolutely. And if you end up with extra milk and you're trying to figure out how to get your kids to eat dairy, you can make oatmeal with milk. Oatmeal doesn't have to be made with water, right? So again, you can sneak that stuff in on them. So if you ever have questions, again, feel free to reach out to us at hello@Colorful Clipboard. Get yourself a Pinterest page started because there's a lot of really good group cooking in Pinterest, and there is ways to intentionally overcook. So for example, when Carrie talks about the summer and not wanting to heat up the kitchen, well, something like refried beans that you could maybe make on Monday can then become tostados on day 2, right? Not everything it can start as one thing. And I use hamburgers and chili as an example because seriously, if Wendy's can do it, so can you, right? So this is, if you've ever had Wendy's chili, it was the hamburgers from the day before. Now, granted, they make their hamburgers fresh. They don't freeze them. Well, that hamburger meat, if they made them that day, it has to go somewhere. They have to cook it, right? So it gets cooked and made into chili. So, all right. So Carrie, we've talked a little bit about how you can save money, think about their food waste, the importance of diversity. I want you to talk to them a little bit about literally how they can get paid to provide food.
Okay, so if 25% of your clientele are lower middle income or in school or low income, which includes the children of your employees who we can't pay $100,000 no matter how much we want to. If 25% of the children at your center fall into, when they go to school, they would be in the free lunch or the reduced lunch, then you can get paid by the USDA. You can get reimbursed for all of your food costs, or for most of your food costs. Depends on how frugal you are as to whether it's all of your food costs or some of your food costs. There are 3 tiers: tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. They are so complicated. 1, 2, 3. And it just becomes part of your enrollment paperwork. When parents enroll, they fill out the USDA food program paperwork, and you send that off to what's called your sponsor. Unless you're a nonprofit, in which case you can have a relationship directly with the federal government. I don't like the paperwork, so I like having a sponsor, even if I'm in a nonprofit. But you may be a paperwork wizard, and so you don't need the sponsor. And they decide whether that child is tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. You don't need to decide. You don't even need to ever look at the paperwork. I prefer to have it all go in and I never look at it, because I don't want to know the financial situation of any of my parents, because it can change the way you feel about them. So I don't look at it. I just fax it all or scan it all and send it in. I don't look at it. Once I get confirmation from the sponsor that they have received it, I shred it. I don't ever need to know. That's what shredding is here for. And there's 3 different meal categories. There's something they call breakfast. You may call it morning snack, but they call it breakfast. And what a breakfast has to have is a fruit, a grain, and a dairy product. So again, we may consider this breakfast because it's oatmeal with raisins and a cup of milk. That can be morning snack. The federal government would consider that breakfast. In breakfast, depending on whether they're tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you're either getting 33 cents a day per child for that meal. Nope, that's wrong. Yeah, this is breakfast. 33 cents or $1.67 or $1.97. Whoop-de-doo, I'm getting $2 to give somebody oatmeal. Kate, does it cost $2 to have oatmeal with raisins and a cup of milk?
Well, it shouldn't. Because that's even more expensive than if you just bought, Quaker instant oatmeal and you're lazy and you did your water out of the microwave. So, let alone you actually got real oatmeal and you actually cooked it. So, in this example, this is absolutely a profit point. In other words, you're making money off of serving breakfast.
Right. For our lowest income families, 33 cents, it's at least paying for the milk. Okay. So maybe I'm having to pay for the raisins and the oatmeal, but at least the federal government is giving me money for the milk. The next time you might feed them is if you didn't want to have that much stuff for breakfast. Instead, you wanted to just have what the federal government calls as a snack, which is any 2 food groups. So I can give you apples and crackers. I can give you steak and potato. It doesn't matter. Any 2 food groups, they don't care. So a classic would be,
you could do celery and nut butter.
I could do celery and nut butter. Absolutely. Or I could do the quintessential animal cookies and milk. That is a snack. And the reimbursement rates there are 9 cents, 50 cents, and $1. Again, at 9 cents, I'm not getting really paid back for what I'm putting into the kids, but at $1, I am. Okay. And then our last meal is this thing that they call lunch supper. Lunch supper. So it's either the lunch meal or the dinner meal. And it is, the reimbursement rates are 35 cents, $3.26, or $3.66. You don't have to keep all that in your head, but I did some math. I did math because I'm willing to do math. And if you had just 3 children enrolled at your center, and one was in tier 1, and one was in tier 2, and one was in tier 3, Kate, what would you guess would be your reimbursement if you just had those 3 kids for a month?
Oh, for a month? I don't know, 300 bucks.
Very close. $282.26 for 3 children. So if instead your program was perfectly broken down, 30% or a third in each group, if you had 30 kids instead of 3, you would be making almost $3,000 a month for feeding children the way we're required to feed children anyway. The sponsor would get usually about 15% of that, but that's still over $2,000 in the month for 30 kids for feeding them what you were going to feed them anyway. If you have 150 kids at your program, the numbers are significantly higher.
So basically so why would people not do this? I mean, this seems like a no-brainer. So what might be some red flags to you as a program that this is probably not necessarily something you would do?
If every single parent at your program pays full-time tuition out of their own pocket.
Okay. So depending on your community, that really is the only reason you should not be part of because you just explained why it doesn't really cost you much. It doesn't bother you much. You don't have to do much. There's not, a lot of paperwork. There's options.
There is some paperwork. You have to keep track of how many children eat each meal. So you have to take attendance. Ooh, that's something we never do at our childcare center. Take attendance. So we have to take attendance. We have to send copies of all the receipts to our sponsor, all of our Cisco and Costco and HEB and whatever receipts that are food. We have to send those to our sponsor, and we have to send them our menu, which is very, very complicated to send those 3 sets of paperwork. If you're instead doing it directly with the federal government, you also have to keep copies of the food nutrition labels for all of your food, which is part of why I like working with a sponsor, because they have a database of all of that and I don't have to keep the copies, which I did do at one of my schools back in the olden days. I had, a 3-ring binder full of page protectors, and I would get they would be out of my normal bread. And so I would have to cut out the plastic thing for the new, for the knockoff bread, because I couldn't get, my Oro wheat that I normally got. And so I had to get, I don't know, Pepperidge Farm or Sunbeam or something. And so I'd have to cut out that. And, I couldn't get the Starkist tuna fish. I had to get the off-brand tuna fish. So I have to cut out the little thing from the tuna fish can. But if you have a sponsor, they probably have all of that and you don't have to cut out the paper. So it was very complicated. And so if you're somebody who had to do the food program back in the 90s, even probably the early 2000s, it was a lot more complicated than it is now. Now, I know of one program that literally gives you a scanner, like you check out with at HEB, that you can scan the food in your kitchen so that they can make sure that they use the right food nutrition it's amazing. So that if something on your receipt didn't pull up in their database, you can scan the UPC code and they'll get it. Oh, magic, so much less cutting out of things than it used to be. But I literally worked with a program where the director was buying it, the owner wanted to sell it, and the director wanted to buy it. Then she was trying to figure out how to make sure that she could pay for the loan she would need to pay for the difference between the asking price and what she had available. And I was like, you qualify for the food program, why aren't you doing it? And she paid for buying the center with the food program. and increased her bottom line. She ended up with $1,000 extra a month in her program after paying a mortgage. It was amazing.
I love that story. That is a great story. So, all right, everybody, another Monday morning action plan. Let's research who is the sponsors in your state, in your city, in your region, and why are you not already a part of the food program? So give us a call, shoot us an email, let us know, check us out at colorfulclipboard.com and tell us your lovely food story.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Colorful Clipboards. Connect with us on social media at Colorful Clipboard or send us an email to hello@colorfulclipboards.
Send us your voicemail with your own questions and stories. If you want to keep learning with us, visit Texas Director, where we continue to have seminars, licensing, programs, and more.
This show has been made by me, Carrie Casey, and Kate Young with assistance from Hallie Casey and Marie Young. If you learned something today, share the show.